Hi, did you know that 2014 marked the year where more people died on too much food rather than on starvation? According to Yuval Harari in his book Sapiens, an excellent read, by the way. We believe that's one of the reasons why food is such an attractive top of the discussion. And currently, what a buzz in the social networks about the new Docu from Netflix about the plant-based diet. I want to thank Netflix for this documentation. It's called The Game Changer. You haven't seen it yet? It's a must. However, you guys ask for our point of view and we'll dive right into it. The docu at times might be a little bit complex, might be a little bit leaning too much towards science. However, we believe it's well done, but it might be that there is room for understanding it in different ways. We want to give our opinion and we add the few key points which are really missing. Hi, my name is Ralph. I'm from AnanDao. It is done by an athlete called James Wilkes, who teaches self-defense in the US Army and fights in MMA. Seems to be a real guy, very credible. His problem, he suffered an injury, crashed his kneecaps, and basically spends a lot of time trying to heal and not really making progress. So in that way, he's just using the time to simply study for himself how to speed up the process. So we get to enjoy Bruce Lee and his search for truth, not really related, however. Then we dive right into the history, back to the Gladiators, and some scientific medical persons reveals to us that according to the bone structure and the chemicals we find into the bone structure, it is obvious that a big part of their food is plant-based. Now, this is where it gets a little bit fishy, because don't know how familiar you are with science. Nowadays, you take one science proving one point, and I'll bring you another science which almost states the opposite. So also in this case, now there is a discussion how valid this is. Chemicals change over the years, especially over the centuries. So how credible is that? However, my question is that really important? What the gladiators ate? Or is it just proving a point which is maybe not too relevant today? Then we move on interviewing the current gladiators of modern times. MMA fighter like Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor, which makes fun of him, calling him a gazelle. And funny enough, first fight, he's losing it. And we are introduced to more athletes, for example, 100-mile runners, which went to plant-based diet. I mean, it seems incredible and seems also to prove the point there is no restriction by changing to plant-based diet. And we get to know the possible creator of the story, Justus Liebig, a German chemist, which created, or so to say, should have created the story of muscle equals meat. So there we have it. Now we're meeting the big guys, for example, a weightlifter and the so-called world's strongest man. Is he really the strongest man? Yes or no? What kinds of record he has? I think it's not really relevant. Even if there are tons of videos arguing about the fact if he is or if he isn't, I think more importantly, he proves the point that it seems plant-based diet, at least we can say it does make you weaker. So that's a nice point and it's good to know. Now we're getting into more science, where protein comes from, how is it actually ending up in our system. But I think that's all not so important for our point. Much more interesting is what is actually the impact of meat versus plant-based diet. That is a very crucial point because it shows clearly that meat-based is in the area of blood flow, in the area of inflammation, quite bad compared to plant-based. Now, what's the meaning of that? Now imagine a bad blood flow. It means that the cells in your body don't get the food in the time they need it, or get much less than they actually should have. So both scenarios are not really nice. More important, second point, inflammation. Now that's very clearly established. That's not only in this documentation. You can go to any Western country and you will see that talking to the medical science, talking to the insurance, health insurance, they actually have the same data. If you're running a high animal diet, that means it puts you a high risk in terms of arthritis, in terms of cancer, and of course in terms of heart disease. It highes your risk exceptionally. So these are 2 points which I think we should carefully, everybody for himself of course, think about it. Now, most of us know that especially the Chinese government knows a little bit more people than anywhere else in the world. However, in that case, it's a really goodie because they have mass data, so-called big data, which shows clearly provinces where meat-based diet is preferred have a much higher risk and much higher occasions of heart disease. What's better in the documentation than use a credible salad which is making the point even more? And who is better in that environment than Arnold Schwarzenegger? So he states very clearly, and I believe that's an interesting point, you need to differentiate what is marketing and sales and what are actual facts. So marketing and sales, you are in the hand of the food industry, and we all know their primary goal is profit. Facts, I think there we are in much safer hands, orient ourselves in medical science and the statistics of health insurance, which telling a much more clear story. Now the documentation moves to history, the good old story 50,000 years ago, and the way our teeth look, and etc, etc, etc. We believe that's not a relevant discussion for today. Today's conditions are totally different, and we could clearly understand from this documentation and many others that an animal diet in today's quantity is a problem. Now, why is that a problem? First, environmentally speaking, there is a lot of data which supports that it's bad for the planet and, as we talked about, bad for the health anyway. A second one, which at least I would like to mention, is a humanitarian one. Everybody who loves animals and has seen any kind of documentation how we grow our animals and how we put them to the slaughterhouse, it's just infuriating. It's horrible, and we should think really hard. Do we really need meat every day? That is a point you will not find in the documentation, but I think that is what we need to ask ourselves. Another excellent point the documentation makes is how fast a change implements our whole system. On an example of firefighters, which are at high risk and need to be on the top of their health, obviously, they made an experiment of going 1 week plant-based diet. And it's just incredible to see, they prove it on the level of cholesterol, how much the cholesterol level goes down on every single person they're checking out. We believe that's an important point which should be noted. A change to plant-based diet has incredibly fast results. That's very good news, guys. Now that all proves a point which has been proven so often. There seems to be nothing wrong with a plant-based diet, so only good news. So again, thanks to Netflix putting in their weight and making it happen that we all discuss in wide our food beliefs and food facts and compare them. Now you might ask yourself, so do I have to go vegan now? I think by the end of the day, that's everybody's own decision. But first of all, you should have the facts, and it's very clear that more and more people going vegetarian or even vegan. And I think it's a personal decision, and we should give up on this missionary thing. That's right, that's wrong. And while we are at it, we should also give up the belief that there is a perfect diet for humankind. Well, apparently there is not. Because if I would ask you, are you the same as everybody else? What would you say? You are incredible as you are, and right you are. So apparently, in ancient systems, as well as in modern science, more and more people talking about body types and their different ways to digest food. This is a subject we want to discuss with you in our next video. But before we go, it's all good now? First of all, I believe to end the pains and the horrible treatment which we give to the animals, reduce this huge amount of animal suffering is a huge plus. Second, you should not forget the same food industry which makes us eat and drink horrible stuff is producing the new vegan stuff as well. Yes, surely there are exceptions. There are startups like Beyond Meat, which hopefully going a very, very different way. But if you look at the maps, who owns the worldwide food, you get down to 3, 4, 5 companies, and that's it. And we need to keep in mind the food industry has other interests, mainly driven by profit. Clearly a point which was not made in this documentation, and I'm just reading the last book from Dave Asprey about being superhuman, and he writes the little fairy tales about CEOs. If they would just know the right things, they would not hesitate to stop and going the other way. Well, Dave, I believe that really is a fairy tale. Unfortunately, the industry has turned to be our enemy. We should use the power which we have cautiously in what to buy in the shop. This is your power, this is our power, and we should use it thoughtfully. Even more power you can get with our new program, Forever Young, an anti-aging body-mind workout. The link you find right underneath. If you liked our video, please give us a thumbs up, and if you want to stay tuned, press the subscription button, press the alarm so you won't miss another one.